Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth, and fancy seeing you here in June. I very welcome my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Are you feeling charitable? Then smash the subscribe button and the like button, and please do follow me on Twitter at MoviesTVMad. Now, normally it will be another DC video. We do a lot of DC conversations on this channel, which is Big Mouth, of course, but I want to expand because I love so much of TV past and present, so many movies past and present. I want to expand the conversation, but obviously DC conversations will be the prominent thing still on this channel, but I love so much more than DC. So for the past, couple of months, we over on Twitter have been enjoying these Life on Mars tweet-alongs. Now, Life on Mars is one of my favourite things that's ever been created. I think it's amazing. I think it's inspired by The Wizard of Oz. It's inspired from Back to the Future. And I think that's amazing. And there's another one it was inspired by, not one that I really know, but those are the two that's prominent in Sam's and Alex Drake's journey in Life on Mars, and then the sequel, Ashes to Ashes. And I really want to talk about my thoughts on this. So the creators of both Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes are modern day geniuses. And I mean, we've been conversing with them every week on the tweet along. It's just been great to talk to both of the showrunners and make new friends and meet other Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes fans. And what's really exciting, tonight, of course, we are re-watching the series finale of Life on Mars. Although it's not really the series finale, because we've now heard, well, I've known for a couple of months, as we've all known, that the creators are developing a Life on Mars third and final season. Now, apparently, rumour, it could be titled Lazarus, but we don't know about that. So anyway, I want to give you my thoughts, because I think, as we watch the series finale tonight, I always felt this was finished in absolutely the right way. It's open-ended, and it can mean whatever you want it to. So if you want to believe that Sam Tyler jumps off the building, splat, and he's dead, that's it. If you think he jumps off the building, he's back in the coma, he's hurt himself, which seems implausible, but we do see that bit when he turns off the radio at the end, and again, it seems like he is on a coma, right? So that's interesting. How did he survive that fall? And this is what I mean. This is how I love mystery box TV and storytelling. They did the same with Lost. But this is interesting because there's a lot of commentary in Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes about police brutality, racism in police, but racism all round as well. We're talking about 1973, and I can't remember, was it 80? Was it 1980 Ashes was set in? It was somewhere in the 80s anyway. And so, you know, we've got someone from 2006, right? We've got two characters here. We've got, is Alex from 2006 or is it later on? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we've got these characters from the noughties, right? And one of them travels to 73, as far as we know, otherwise, or they're mad or they're imagining it. I do have a lot of theories about what the meaning of Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes is, and we will go into that. So, yeah, you've got these two characters from the 21st century, basically, and they're going to the 20th century, and things are archaic and different. But what they realise is they are trying to teach these people to be better and to look at things at a different gaze. But what's actually instrumentally brilliant is, while they think they're teaching Hunt something, Gene Hunt, who is a very interesting character. I think this is actually the Wizard of Oz, or Biff Tannen, or Doc Brown. He's an amalgamation of all those three characters for me. Now, I don't know what the creators actually think of this, but I like coming up with my own theories for stuff that I love, and I'm sure that's okay, right? So he's an interesting character, but he seems like this racist, misogynistic oaf. But actually, he's teaching these educated people from the 21st century stuff that they didn't realise they needed. It's that gut as a police person to go and say, I have a gut feeling about this. And sometimes you're going to be correct and sometimes you're going to be wrong. Gene Hunt is a bull in a china shop. Now, Alex and Sam don't know people like that in the 21st century. So it's really, really difficult for them to understand this mentality. So anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure there's a few straddlers who normally watch my DC videos who have never heard of these two shows. So Life on Mars, let's start with Life on Mars, then we'll talk about the sequel, Ashes to Ashes. Life on Mars is the story of police officer, plainclothes police officer, CID or whatever you want to call him, Sam Tyler. What happens is at the start, he's a very, if you like, a bit of a, I wouldn't go cold-hearted, but he doesn't seem to go with his gut. He doesn't seem happy to be in his reality. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And so what happens is he did date Maya, another police officer he works with. Now, they're chasing a killer, and she goes after the killer on her own, and then she gets kidnapped. Then he's in the car, he's frustrated with himself because they argued. You know, she's trying to use her gut, and he's going, do you see anyone here, you know? And kind of thinking with their heart rather than their head. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because this is the core kind of statement and commentary of the whole piece, including Ashes to Ashes. So anyway, he stops his car, he's stopping there, and all of a sudden, he's ran over. And then he awakes in 1973, and he doesn't know where he is. And this is where he meets Gene Hunt. And, you know, all the other characters as well. And all these different characters, like Ray, who despises Sam. And you've got, and then obviously, I forgot her name on the show, but Liz White's character, who's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, Sam is immediately attracted to her. And they start off as friends, if you want. And he just tells her that he's from 2006. But she's just like, you're mad, mate. You need help. But he's not lying. He's always honest with her, and that's amazing, and that's kind of refreshing. He doesn't seem to care that she's going to think he's crazy or she's going to go off and tell someone, because Sam initially thinks he's in a coma and he's imagining everyone, or this is some kind of intense dream. The opening title is My Name is Sam Tyler. I was in an accident. Now, this is interesting because there's a lot of people who feel Sam wasn't in an accident and actually was run down purposely. Now, I do have a theory on this, that Sam actually isn't from 2006, and there is actually a third timeline, a third time period he's from. And basically, somehow, he's able to go from these timelines and someone is trying to stop him. Now, we also know there is a rogue element in both Ashes to Ashes and Life on Mars who are trying to fuck up this. They want to destroy Gene Hunt, basically. Gene Hunt may be rough around the edges, but he's the angel of this story. He died as a 19-year-old police officer and then ended up in the past. No, not in the past, really. He ended up in the future. But if he died as a 19-year-old police officer, how long has he been in the past? And have the years moved on? Is it always 1973? And it's interesting that they moved from Manchester to London when we're watching Ashes to Ashes. That's an interesting thing. They move after something happens to Sam. Sam's actually in a car accident off screen, and apparently he dies, right? And that's it. But nobody sees the accident. And we find out in the end because Gene Hunt tells Alex Drake, because Alex is obsessed with finding out what happened to Sam Tyler, right? Even though she knows in the 21st century he's actually dead. So in the end, she tells him. He tells her, I took him to the pub. Now, that reference of taking him to the pub basically means he went to the afterlife. He was finally dead. It was his time to move on. Gene Hunt is everything I assumed he was when I first watched Life on Mars. He is this... I don't even know how to explain it. And I spoke to the creators over on Twitter about this, and they said we didn't even know what he was going to become back in the early days of Life on Mars. But I do believe he's obviously this protector of dead police officers. And it's interesting, actually, that in Life on Mars, Sam, as far as we know, not dead. But all the rest of the police officers seem to be already dead. I don't totally understand the premise, and I think that's what's so good about mystery box storytelling. But that's the thing. So you've got these really interesting characters in the past, And then you've got this series finale where ultimately, I'm sorry if I'm spoiling it for you, he basically has to betray the team in 73 to get back to 2006, which he does, right? But then he's out of the coma. He's living this life. Yeah, he goes back to 2006, and just like that, he's out of the coma. He wakes up. He's living his life again. Now, I think it's a bit weird how he comes out of the coma and he's basically dressed and ready. It's a bit odd. I'm not sure if there's a time jump there. So that's interesting. Seems a bit like a dream, right? Anyway, he's not happy to be back in 2006. So literally, he commits suicide. He jumps off the building, not because he wants to die, because he thinks in his mind, and I don't know if you want to call it a twisted mind, he thinks by killing himself, he can go back to 1973, where there's this flag going on and he wants to save his team. And this is what happens. So he does. And him and Annie, that's who Liz White plays, Annie. How could I forget her damn name? Anyway, so they live happily ever after. And Sam is in 1973 now, and that's it. And it finishes like that. So a few years later, we get the biggest news of all time that we are getting. What was the jump? Was it, did we wait 2 years? I can't remember. Anyway, Ashes to Ashes begins. Ashes to Ashes actually has the best premiere of any drama I've ever seen. It's shot like a theatrical movie. It's simply amazing. So the first thing we hear is a little girl reading, "My name is Sam Tyler. I was in an accident. I arrived in 1973. I'm a man in a coma back in time." Now that's interesting because when I first heard that, I didn't know what was going on. And then you see it's actually Alex Drake's daughter reading this, and Sam Tyler was her patient. He claims to have been talking to a professional, mental health professional who's part of the police, and it's obviously Alex Drake. So what happens is, Alex Drake has got her own arc in Ashes to Ashes. It's not Sam Tyler's. You've got to be very careful here. It's Sam Tyler's world still. This is still Sam Tyler's story. You must understand that. But Alex Drake is the next chapter. And because Alex knows Sam's claims, part of her, says this guy's mentally ill, I've got to help him. He's talking crap, but basically I'm going to help him. But there's another side of her, the shrink side, that's actually kind of curious. How did he see all this? And how is he remembering these delusions, right? So what happens is she's called to something happens, she's with her daughter, she's shot, and I think she's not killed. I can't remember. Is she killed or is she in a coma? I think she's actually killed. I can't remember. Anyway, she arrives in the 80s, and of course, Sam has given Alex a detailed description of what Gene Hunt and his team look like. So all of a sudden, she's in the 80s, and she's going, "It's Gene Hunt." Now, it's interesting. It must have been a bloody good description by Sam for her to know. But I suppose you couldn't misinterpret Gene Hunt. He looks the way he looks. Anyway, amazing. So then we've got this brand new arc, and all Alex is really interested in is Sam Tyler. She wants to find him. Now this is interesting because she knows that he died in the present, but still she's looking for him here in the afterlife. And I'm not sure, and I can't recollect if Alex actually believes what is happening, because she believes if she finds Sam, she can get back home. But the problem is nobody is saying where Sam is. Well, they are. He's dead. And from the moment Alex works out that he's dead, there's a problem. How does she get back? Don't forget, Sam's the only one who was able to cross over to the threshold and then go back again. No one else has ever done this in this universe as far as we know. So that's an interesting element. That's why I believe these are Sam's worlds. Somehow his great mind has created all of this. I also believe in the third timeline is where Sam's from. And I believe that Annie and Gene, maybe as different characters, come from that world. Don't forget, part of Ashes to Ashes and Life on Mars was inspired by The Wizard of Oz. So I think we don't know the full realms of the story. Now, I did talk about the plans for Life on Mars 3, where basically Sam Tyler is in a TV show, right? And I forgot what it's called. And he's a copper in a TV show. An interesting premise, right? and it kind of swings from the 70s to there, and I think even the 80s. I'm not quite sure of the details. I think in tonight's tweet along, if you're interested, because I'll be involved, and obviously the creators and a few other people, and John Sims going to be there. He's not officially on Twitter, but he's taking over an account. Same with Phil Glenister, who played Gene Hunt. So very, very exciting. You know, this is part of the build-up of Life on Mars 3. And as I say, we are going to rewatch Ashes as well, which I'm really excited about. I just think that Ashes to Ashes and Life on Mars, this universe, this franchise, is the most beautiful story ever told. And the greatest originality of storytelling is inspired by great stories. And this is what Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes is. It's an adult version of Back to the Future and The Wizard of Oz, but it's very interesting. It goes into the Sweeney, and it goes into that world. It takes a person from the modern world into the Sweeney era. Oi, mate, you're nicked. I'm going to smash your head against the window, right? I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to be sexist and misogynistic and racist. Not because it's clever, not because the writers are trying to get kind of an emotional reaction from racists, but they're trying to say what happened here is wrong. And we're seeing it through the gaze. Sam Tyler and Alex Drake are us, the audience. We're disgusted by it. And that's the whole point. But even though I like the cop show aesthetic, and people have called it a cop show, you know, a black comedy, whatever you want to call it, it's not a comedy. It's more of a comedy. It has got that aesthetic of being this cop show, but there's more to it than that. You know, how is this guy able to, be in 73 and still hear himself in a coma? Surely he's in the thresholds of a pre-afterlife, but it could be deeper than that. And then Ashes to Ashes is because Alex is dead, right? And so if the third season is called Lazarus, that means it's about Sam rising from the dead, or all the characters who have maybe Gene's taken. Well, he took them all to the pub at the end of Ashes to Ashes, didn't he? They're all rising back because Gene needs his army, because the darker elements of this universe are trying to take it over. Again, as they did in Life on Mars, as they did in Ashes to Ashes. And as I say, these two shows, Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes, this whole one franchise, it's a whole universe. And Sam started off this story. I love Keely Hawes as Alex Drake, but the problem with it was initially she wasn't Sam Tyler. We were in love with John's performance as Sam and the way he was written, and nobody who came in was ever going to be able to replace Sam in our hearts. But I think as we got to the third season, we actually started enjoying her. I think the third season is the best season of Ashes to Ashes. But it'd be interesting going back, watching it with the people who made it and the fans, tweeting along to it every week, seeing how I feel about it, because I've only seen the whole thing once. Life on Mars, I've watched it so many times because it's a classic to me. It's an interesting sequel, Ashes to Ashes, because it is brilliant. It may even be better made and better written than Life on Mars, but there is something classic about Life on Mars. And I do prefer the first season of Life on Mars to the second season. I actually feel that the first season's a lot darker, but I think the writers and the creators think the second season is. So it's all about opinions, really, isn't it? But the whole thing's amazing. It's one of the best things ever created, and I've got so much respect for these guys for creating it. So come and join me tonight. I'm so excited for this. Life on Mars Live, that is the hashtag. It's time for Sam Tyler's final journey. Or is it? It looks like Lazarus is going to rise. Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. And I'll be back probably tomorrow with the DC Daily. See you again soon.